welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and Countdown to Christmas 2021. I know at the end of yesterday's vlog, I mentioned that the videos that will be coming between now and Christmas Eve will all be quick projects that can be done in the little last rush to find something before the holiday is here. However, I forgot that I do have one more project that might take a little bit more time, unless of course you're a very, very fast knitter. Because today I want to talk about slippers and socks. And I want to tell you the story of baby booties turned slippers for my husband. So people who grew up in the town that I grew up in the community that I grew up in, will know that my mom made baby booties. She made lots and lots and lots of baby booties. I know one year she talked about how she gave away 100 pair of these. I know that she occasionally, once or twice, but not much more, she did sell a few of these. But the vast majority of baby booties that she made, she gave away. And I should have stuffed these so you could see them. I have some others that I have stuffed, but I want these. These were one of the last pairs that she made before she passed away. She made these baby booties for my kids. My son loved them. He's had cold feet. Even since he was a baby, he's always had cold feet, and he loved them. And she made these for him from the time he was an infant all the way up until he was toddling around. As he got bigger, she put leather on the bottom so that they wouldn't slip. But he loved them, and she just made me sets after sets after sets. And when my daughter came along, my daughter didn't like having anything on her feet. She became, when she got older, in those toddler years, she loved stealing everyone's shoes, but she didn't like wearing shoes at that time. But my mom made these baby booties, and she learned to make them for premature babies as well. And if somebody in the community had twins or had a premature baby, a tiny one, she would scale these down and make them for the little tiny feet. And so when she passed away, it was one of the things everybody remembered about her was the baby booties. And what a lot of people didn't realize is that these baby booties that she made came from a pattern in which they were made knit flat and then a seam up the back that my great-grandmother had made a couple of, and that my grandmother was trying to figure out how to make. But my grandmother was never as advanced of a knitter as she was a crocheter. And so she got frustrated. And so she asked my mom if she'd figure out how to make it easier. And my mom sat down and she figured out how to do it all on double pointed needles, all in the round, so that the only seam is the final along the bottom to sew it up. And once she figured out how to do that, then she was off and running, and her hands were always busy making either sweaters or baby booties. And she got frustrated when the yarn that she used was changed and it wasn't as dainty. And those last years that she was making the baby booties, she was always talking about how she couldn't find the right yarn. But she had stumbled upon a small ball of Angora yarn in a specialty store one day. And so she started putting along these toe ridges the Angora and having little fluff on them. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be wonderful if she could have more of that yarn? But her budget would not allow for much more than just that one ball that she purchased. And that is how I got inspired to learn to spin. How we first decided to get Angora bunnies, and how I was first inspired to spin. So moving from these baby booties, though, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of other baby booties, but beforehand I want to explain how we ended up with a pair for my husband. So, when I was in college, I had a friend that had some wonderful knit slippers that came up the calf, and I asked my mom to replicate something like that, and she did, and she hated it. So when I asked for something like that for my husband, she said, you know, why don't I take the same pattern that I use here, just get larger yarn and see what happens. And that's what she did. And this pattern and this pattern are the exact same. The only difference is she had to put, I think, one extra set of bumps on the toe to make it longer. But it is otherwise exactly the same pattern as the baby booties. It's amazing what happens when you go from tiny yarn to big yarn, what you end up with. And then with leather that she had from years before, because we had a dairy farm. She had grown up on a dairy farm and moved back to the dairy farm when I was a young child. And for a brief while, we when the animals would die, natural causes, we would take the hides to a tanner, and he would tan up the leather for us. It was a very brief time in my youth that we did that, and she had saved some of the leather. So she made these for my husband. Now, I will tell you, this is 100% acrylic, and they do not wear out. The leather was getting a little thin, but the slipper is over 25 years old. And so, little tiny baby booties, big adult baby booties, definitely something to try. Now, I've said this before, I'm not the most proficient at following a pattern, and my ability to get two items to match, not always something that works out very well. But I did try to make my son some slippers like these that I wanted to felt so that they'd be a little bit warmer. I did manage, and I'll share a picture of these feet in a picture. I did manage, but it took felting them a great deal, and then later taking the leather off the bottom, felting them some more, and then trimming the leather down and sewing the leather back on to finally get them to where they fit his feet. And he does love them. They keep his feet warm. In the picture that I've shared, he's actually wearing a pair of socks that his sister made inside the slippers that I made, and with the two combined, his feet stay warm on the tile floors of his apartment. And so the tradition goes on. But when it comes to baby booties, I have made a set. Might be these, but I lose track. I like making the hats to match. Okay, but my daughter, she uses my hand spun, and she makes the baby booties with the Angora on the top, just like her grandma did. And then I'll make the little matching hats. She will make sweaters, and I will make sweaters. So some of my early hand spun with all of its flaws, this little set has been put aside for future family members. But my daughter, she had fun. She used, this case was striping sock yarn, and then she tried reducing them down to doll or preemie sized. The pattern that we've been using, it's really quite simple to adjust. But she had some adorable little sock yarn, and she decided to make these. This is more of my hand spun. that my daughter has stitched up. I've made the hat. But I love how you can get completely different sizes. Sometimes just by having a different hand knitting them. So I wanted to share those with you because long before I ever tried to knit socks, long before my daughter tried to knit socks, we did baby booties. Now I am trying to remember back to when she started doing baby booties versus socks. And that brings me to my other favorite story when this topic comes up. So my daughter one day, she has, my daughter has some areas that she has really high aptitude. And it makes her at times a little distracted. And unbeknownst to me, she was working on a solution to being able to do her homework and not get distracted. And one day she came out of her bedroom and she had knee-high striped socks on that she had knit herself using an old pattern that she found of probably my grandma's or something of that nature. It was the type of knee-high sock that you actually have to do increases to get up around your calf and then decreases to make it fit just right, whatever. She did knee-high knit socks. And actually, I guess they were top down. She figured out how to do the heels. She figured out how to do the toe. The whole entire thing she did while doing her history homework. And she told me that she discovered that when she was knitting, that she could concentrate on what she was reading better. So I was like, all right, then make socks. She was about 12 or 13 years old at the time. So she has made socks. And I have a few pair of her more recent socks. So she has made socks, and she's discovered that whatever the label says on the yarn does not necessarily mean what you expect it to mean. Because she said, this is, I believe it was this one. No, it was this one. These are superwash. These were listed superwash. And her feet aren't really this tiny, but they shrunk to this. Now, she will wear them. They are tremendously felted, and she wears them as bed socks. And her feet do fit in them because they do stretch out and somehow fit. Her feet are so much tinier than mine. But for slippers or socks to wear in bed, it doesn't matter if her heel comes up here a little higher. So she said, always test. If you're using a new yarn, you might want to test a sample because these were not supposed to felt. And these felted really, really well. She's made these. You can see a little bit more the size of her little foot with this one. And if you can see, she's darned them because they've worn thin. But yeah. Oh, heavily felted. So she has knit these to fit. And then they felt and they fit nice and snug and they work well as slippers. So these are two of the shorter socks. She has made longer socks. And that inspired me. And so I'll show some pictures. I have made some longer socks for her. I have made some longer socks that I intended for myself. And then discovered that I didn't actually enjoy wearing them. So she felted them and they became hers. But one of the things I started doing a number of years ago, I dabbled with painting purchased yarns, you know, the self-striping sock yarn. I dabbled with it. Oh, it's so much fun. I'd rather at this point dye fiber and spin it than to dye yarn and then have to knit it. But these are some of the ones that I've actually hand dyed the fiber, and I know on the camera it's showing a little bit blue, but these are actually watermelon colors, green and pinks, and I knit these up, and I do love having these as little slippers to run around the house in. They have shrunk a little bit, just as my daughter discovered. if you throw them in the wash, even though it's a super wash, they do shrink up a little. That's not a bad thing because I have a tendency to make things a loose gauge. I think I've made them the right size and they're still too big. So these, I put these on sock blockers and you can see, I always end up making them too big. These should be the right size for my feet. They're too big for my feet. But this is some other hand-dyed fiber that I did. You can see they're getting worn. I love running around the house in them. And they're way too big for the big sock blockers. But they're nice and comfortable. And they do keep my feet warm. So one of the things, I tend to wear compression socks a lot. And, or, you know, I have some issue with my ankles. And I have swelling issues. And so I wear compression socks a lot. And in the winter, that's not enough to keep my feet warm. So a lot of times these will go right over the top of the compression socks and keep me toasty warm. So I've made these. These were made out of hand-dyed, where I was using the mineral pigments. The mineral, I'm drawing a blank. They were basically minerals that you use them, you paint on the fiber with using a protein wash that was made out of soybean, soybeans that had been soaked and pureed, and that liquid was used to combine with the mineral pigments and painted on it. And that was just a fun project to do and a fun yarn. And I have made some for my husband. I actually made them for him to be able to wear, with, you know, in his shoes and all of that. But it appears that he is much like myself, and the knitted feel in our shoes, it's something that we're not accustomed to, and so they work really well around the house, not so much in our shoes. I'm so much more lucky. My daughter, she knits at a finer gauge most of the time than I do, but also she loves them as a felted. So I have come to the conclusion that at least in this household, knitted socks are for slippers more than as socks. But these were a lot of fun to make. They're 2 skeins of the hand-dyed. The orange colored is, again, the mineral dyes, and I think it's been so long since I dyed them. I'm trying to remember. No, there's too many different colors. So no, all of this is hand dyed with the standard acid dyes on blank of sock weights, fingering weight sock yarn that you can purchase and then dye. Lots of fun. Definitely something worth trying. And see, proof that I can actually make 2 things that are relatively the same size. But that's only by having 2 sets of needles going at the same time, doing 10 rows, and then going back and forth. That's the only way I can keep track of it. I do these toe up. I'll put a link in the description of the toe up inspiration video that I used to create this. This is actually a pattern where I've hodgepodged excuse me, I think I've inhaled yarn. This is a toe and a heel that I've taken from different YouTube videos, combined them together to make this sock. It's a vanilla sock. Any toe you pick, any heel you pick will probably work. But I will include the links of, to the videos that inspired me to work this vanilla sock. Okay, so that is my socks and slippers. And I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you have felt some inspiration. Thank you for letting me share with you the stories of my my mother and my grandmothers, my daughter, my son, my husband. It has been one of the great Christmas joys this season for me to be able to share these stories with you. To share these stories again with my children and the rest of my friends and my family. I don't get to spend Christmases anymore with my mother or my grandmother. But I do get to spend Christmases with their memories. And when it comes to socks and slippers, especially those slippers, those baby booties, those memories are very cherished. And I know that for the people who received the baby booties from my mom, the memories are very cherished. So I wish you a wonderful, happy holiday season and a Merry Christmas. And I hope that you will find some time to unwind with fiber and fabric, even if it's just through sharing your memories with your own family and friends. I hope to see you tomorrow for some quick projects to help us get through the last days of countdown to Christmas. We'll see you soon.